the suppression of the use of marijuana and of the forces lurking behind it are the most important jobs this department is now engaged in. In 1930, the records on marijuana in the Washington office of the Narcotics Division scarcely filled a small folder like this. Today, they fill cabinets.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Coloradians and everyone that's smart enough to listen from the outside.
One of the most amazing plants we've ever discovered.
The pot party, the trippers, the grasshoppers, the hip ones, all gathered in secrecy and flying high as a kite.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode, Emergency Pod. With your host, as always, it's Kip Wilson, and to my right, I've got CB. How are you, CB?
I'm excited to dive into this emergency podcast.
I mean, all hands on deck. Eve will handle the editing. If I say cunt too many times, we'll have it cut. That's not true. We're doing one cuts because we got to get this dropped by the afternoon wave before the dinner rush. We're doing this podcast of Stoned Appetit presented by Riki Seltzers, the brainchild between Tivoli Brewery and our friends over at Breckenridge Distillery. And, of course, our favorite fucking glass shop over at Ritual, Colorado. That's right there at 2521 Sheridan Boulevard. Because this is an emergency episode, we're not doing those full ad reads, but if y'all are looking to shop local, check out Ritual, both online and in-house for quality glass. Chris, we're talking Michelin, BIB, noms, awards, notifications. Yeah, but I don't know, obviously they'll be recognized on the stage when the event comes up on the 12th, but at the same time, I don't know if it's an actual, what they will get in return. But what we're talking about today is, obviously everyone knows about the world-renowned Michelin star program, but what we're discussing today is something called the BIB Gourmand recognition, I believe may be a way to describe it as well, or is that right?
Yeah, I think it's just another category.
Yeah, Denise mentioned it. Yeah, it's been...
This one is just a separate category that denotes restaurants off.
Approachability.
I think the way they define it is exceptionally good food at moderate prices.
Okay, so what we would say is that has a good bang for its buck, which obviously, we spoke with Denise Michelson last week about all of the recognitions you get through the Michelin program or guide are those of noteworthy positivity, all it does is drive more traffic to the restaurants. Well, they dropped the casual eatery list, the bang for your buck list. And I'm not going to lie, Chris, I'm not keen on it. I mean, if I grew up thinking that if you get half of a test correct, that would be a success. I feel like they got half this list pretty fucking spot on, but there's going to be everyone's going to always be upset or there will be glaring omissions. But holy crap, this is a kind of a surprise of a list.
And just to be clear, I want to make sure we're on the same page here. This list announced today, those are potential contenders. These aren't nominations.
No, these are the awards. No, these are the BIB. Yes. Yep. So these are the 9 restaurants that will be getting this notification or notoriety through both the Michelin Guide program as well as on the night of the events, the 12th, going down at Mission. It's a very big announcement. We had a post going up this morning for Hop Alley from a dinner we did a couple weeks ago, and literally as I dropped it, I got the fucking email from the Michelin Guide, and they were like, "Oh, here's the 9 restaurants," and I was like, "Shit, pivot from great place to have a friendly dinner to congrats to our friends over at Hop Alley." So Hop Alley, obviously, we talk about them a lot on this here pod because we do enjoy their food. I think they are kind of the quintessential definition of this because while it's maybe technically elevated street eats, it's a refined dining experience with a fun, lively atmosphere, and you can get out of there without getting your ass kicked, by the check. So that was what I would think is a perfect setting for this. Hop Alley being in that cup of tea. Someone like Basta, you remember, shout out to Chef Kelly Whitaker and things of that nature. I think there are some really great representations all the way to the literal casual eateries like the La Diablas. We love fucking Chef Jose. That was a great holler as well. But there were some that kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, and so I think some of the ones that you and I both agree, I can see that being on there. I think what's great about those ones is they truly reflect traditional, like exceptional way. They're highlighting the cuisine of that area. And I think some of these on this list do it fucking spectacular. Like they're offering authentic pozole. It's affordable. They're bringing you the best possible food they can make here from that cuisine.
Agreed. And, you know, folks like Bosto, you know, we've harped on Chef Kelly Whitaker and his team using like their own fermentation process. They're fucking growing their own grains. I like to see someone like Bosto who does, you know, casual pizzas or a whole fish, like when we went and ate with Andy Thorne and Cecilia for the podcast. You know, it's been a minute since we've been there. But what this also brought was some things that made me wonder. Like this list, there's a lot of questions. But before we dive into the questions, I want to give a quick breakdown. Like we were just talking about the BIB Gourmand, the STAR program, something that seems to be missed by fucking everybody on TikTok and Instagram and in these articles when we see things like Annette was snubbed and things of that nature. And for those that don't remember, Caroline Glover and Annette is the restaurant inside Stanley. They won our March Madness bracket in 2022, which is pretty much the best award ever, and then followed that up with a Beard winning best chef for the Rocky Mountain region. And everyone's like, fuck, they should be in consideration. Let me tell you why they are not. Just let's get through this real quickly. You have to pay to play. The people that did pay to play when Michelin announced they would be coming to Colorado, and the reason they probably did come to Colorado was because a lot of people probably forked over a lot of fucking cash. Probably folks like Aspen, because Aspen Snowmass is one of the qualified categories or towns that's in contention and review. Vail, Beaver Creek. Both of those two also are paying to play. While they're not representative in the BIB Gourmand, for obvious reasons, nothing in those towns are approachable in any stretch of the imagination, but also Denver and Boulder being a part of that. Aurora is being omitted because Aurora didn't want to pay to play. What sucks most is that Annette is literally like a 5-iron from Denver County, which, I mean, that's just part of the game. But one great thing about Aurora, and hopefully we see them in, you know, future years being talked about, because it's once not only the second largest city in fucking Colorado, I believe by technicalities, but it's also the home to a lot of authentic and unrepresented or covered gems in the food and hospitality industry because of the friendly tax brackets they have for people that move small businesses there. So it does suck that they are glaring omissions like Annette or a Poulette down in Parker, like we talked about last week. But there are, I think, some glaring omissions, but we can't call them omissions yet because the stars have not been given out. But I can't for any life of me, expect 5-6 stars to come across fucking Colorado in the first year. Would you? Was that a little bit far-fetched? I mean, you come from fine dining. Should we expect 6 out the gate, 5 out the gate, something like that?
You know, I don't really know. Like, the Michelin thing's always been something kind of on the outer edges of, like, I've never really lived in a city where they've had a Michelin guide come in. I do know, like, the rating systems, for those who don't know, like, a 1-star means high-quality cooking worth the stop.
But and we can stop right there because we'll talk about the 2nd star next year because you can only get one. It's not like it's a ranking system. Like, you have to earn, retain, and then go after a 2nd before you can get in that. But my question is, like, I mean, I know you know New York well, and we know that the Michelin program goes around, you know, the world. Do the same set of standards for like the BIB Gourmand in New York and LA or places like that apply here, or is Denver on its own standard? So like this is, you know, on Denver scale, you know, like when we joke about a Denver 10 or a Colorado 10 is a New York 7, you know, whether it be us being 10s and, you know, being 7s in New York, you know, but like, is that how that works? Or is it like we're supposed to be competing with the Chicago or, you know, whatever of the worlds, and everyone's on the same scale?
I think if you, let's say you ate at a 1 Michelin star restaurant here, and then you ate at a 1 Michelin star restaurant in Chicago, I think you're going to get the same quality. I think their whole objective is to kind of have this impartiality on their rating criteria, and that's what they base these stars off of.
Okay, well, we're not talking stars today, but I get what you're saying. Like, so there's a level of expectation that comes across with one of these accolades that you get. But we're talking about something a little bit on the lesser scale, like the AAA. It's something that's like, and I think of Tavernetta in this instance because it seems like they're in an echelon, and Hop may be in that camp as well, where they're in a different echelon than some of these restaurants that they're included with. So is it like, oh, these are people that may get the nod next year? Or are we talking about what I was told from some insiders in the industry, which is if we're seeing folks like Basta and we're seeing folks like Tavernetta get the BIB Gourmand, then that means that they didn't want to give people like Bobby and Kelly 2 stars when it comes to giving out stars on the 12th. So like if we assume that Tavernetta is kind of outkicking their coverage in this department, is it safe to assume that Frasca will be getting awarded a star on the 12th? Is a question that drives my next curiosity.
So it's funny that like you're saying that you think they included Tav in the BIB Gourmand category because they didn't want to.
They don't want to, because otherwise it'll be a term of exclusion in totality by only awarding 1 star to the Frasca Food Group, because then if Frasca was to get a star on the 12th and Tavernetta was not on this list, then where would they fall? You know, that's my question.
I don't think that really matters. I think the BIB Gourmand, one of the things in that category says they must offer menu items priced below a maximum determined by local residents. So I want to say the reason Tavernetta is in this category is because even though it's at a higher price point than some of the others in the category, I think it's below that threshold of being like that next.
It's not about price point in terms of getting the star. No, not in the slightest, because I do believe that they not only offer whatever the minimum or bare would be, but at the same time, I think it comes to when you're on this list, you're no longer going to be on the short list for the star. This is where your run ends. And so that's what makes me wonder, because when we see some of these restaurants that did get the nod today, it makes me wonder, and it's going to make a lot of chefs wonder. And so that's why we had to do the emergency pod.
Also, my question to you, and maybe you've heard this today, let's say me and you own a restaurant, we get in the BIB Gourmand category.
Gourmand.
Whatever. Can we potentially come out of that category and maybe get a star?
Yeah, in the future years, I'm not saying that this is where you're capped. I'm saying that because we see Tavernetta on this list today, we will not see them on the stage for stars on the 12th. And that's the point. And I guess I think that's how it goes. Okay. And I know that we come from a land of not this kind of echelon of food. So like when we talk about those, I put them in very high regard because they are fucking wonderful meals. And some of these restaurants, obviously I'm going to critique them, but only because it just throws a little bit of a loop. Like it makes me wonder, what is the criteria to be in this category? Because no offense to any of them. Like I said, like you mentioned how La Diabla has that approachability and it does it in spades. Fucking Jose, Ivan, they've done an exceptional job. And we're seeing a lot of different different genres of food. But what we saw was a lot of things like the Latin American cuisine, Mexican cuisine, Asian cuisine, which obviously this is a meat and potatoes town, which made me wonder, like I'm going to start with Mr. Oso. If we're talking about Latin American approachable restaurants, is it really where does that mean Lucinia falls? That's what makes me wonder, because they're obviously inside Denver County. What was the criteria that made the Crunchwrap Supreme superior to the flavors of all other Latin dishes, that may be on a more authentic, I guess, route or menu? And that's kind of one of those things that threw me for a loop. And obviously, like we said, we come from places that don't have a Michelin star or, the BIB Gourmand. But what we do have is a little bit of fair interpretation. We've eaten at just about every high-end restaurant, and I try to make sure we hit every strip mall in town. But at the same time, like, I love seeing recognition for the folks like AJ's Pit Barbecue. Like, did not see that fucking coming. Fucking love to see that for them. And you know who would love to see? That means that Pit Fiend should be on that short list next year for this exact approach, because they exemplify the same kind of creativity. But I was not expecting to see a barbecue spot in Denver on our Michelin BIB Gourmand list. Were you?
No, that was surprising at all, because the one thing you think of when you think of Denver is not barbecue.
It's not, but that's, I mean, AJ's was our 1 seed in the barbecue region for, 2 years in a row. Like, they are very well deserved. They do badass barbecue classes as well. Like, they are very much a sturdy spot, but I didn't expect to see something like that on this list, even if the name of the game is cost-friendly, approachability, things of that nature.
Yeah, and with this too, like, barbecue's popularity in recent years has just blown up, But, I mean, AJ's is obviously awesome, but I wonder, like, what all raters are looking at. Like, are you looking at, like, the energy of the chefs, like, the quality of the ingredients, all those things, how those come into play here? Because, I mean, like, AJ's may be doing more than I even know. Like, I know they're producing great barbecue, but I think you got to look at, like, the whole, like, they even have in here the personality of the chef representing the dining experience. So maybe some of these establishments are bringing a lot more than what we maybe even knew about. So, like, my question is, like, Ashkara. No shame at Ashkara, but how is Softa?
So,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's where my next question is. It's like, look, I'm not here to disparage any chef or team, because I know that all of these restaurants and the ones that we've discussed that aren't on this list or may be omitted in the coming weeks, we know they all work their fucking tails off. I'm not saying that. But if Oshkar is on this list, does that mean that Softa is going to get a nod? Because obviously, Alon is a friend of ours. We love him. He's been a guest on this pod. But we're also from the South, so we remember the whole Besh situation. Like, that, I mean, his patience alone deserves a fucking star. But at the same time, like, everybody in the city would probably agree, like one and then the other. So if they are on this list, does that mean that we should start deducing that maybe we can kind of start predicting some of the stars? Like, and we spoke with some folks in the media, and I said Lucinia, but who else would fall into this category of somebody that's doing something where personality and vivaciousness comes out in not only the restaurant, is someone like a Brasserie Brixton, where it's the approachability is there. There's a personality that comes through in every plate, but also in the staff. So I'm very curious as to how that goes, but we won't really be able to say who is a snub until the 12th. I would love to ask how many stars you think you're going to give out, if they're going to give out. And then also there should be a point of recognition. We joked in the intro about how there was no approachable dining offerings for those that are in the Aspen Vale, Snowmass, Beaver Creek areas. I mean, we can just go ahead and write Little Nell in for a star in Hard Ink. I mean, every fucking Michelin star across the country or chef has worked in the Nell for at least an internship or a rehab stint. So, like, that's where you have to go do 90 days at minimum. Like, everybody has the Nell on their resume. So it is highly touted, but we see, like, no mention of Vale or Aspen on here. So we can assume the Nell is going to get a star. How many other stars do you expect to see on the 12th?
I would expect, like, max throughout the Colorado region.
Yeah.
I would say maybe 4.
I think 4 is the max, and I think it's so that they can start saying, hey, we're here, we have a program, we're building this out. But this list here today throws a lot of, like, curiosity, because I am wondering, like, we've done birthday parties at Glow. We've eaten there at Raw Bar Ramen, but it beats out someone like an Uncle, who is an institution. Obviously, we gave Tommy his flowers earlier, but a ramen star that is highly regarded in the community. Like, obviously, I'm not doubting the judges. I'm sure they did all of their research and due diligence, but I'm very curious to see, like, if it was personality, but was it the vibe of the location? Was it like they're doing something somebody else isn't? That is kind of what I'm wondering, how these restaurants, it's like if you're going to one ramen spot in Colorado, we're telling folks glow according to the Michelin media. And I like glow, but what do I get? What's the vibe here? Because I've always fucked with their raw bar. So to find out that they got it for the ramen side, it makes me wonder, like, what am I missing here? What do I need to do here?
Do you think they got it for the ramen?
I mean, it says ramen, Chris. I mean, obviously we're new here. We're all new to this game because this is how it's played. So
I'm wondering if, like, maybe Glow Noodle House, if maybe they're, and, this is where some of our lack of knowledge with doing certain cuisines really well. Like, some of that we just aren't going to know off the top of our heads. But maybe Glow, maybe the way they approach certain items that they make and things like that.
A traditional,
yeah.
Because it is good. Like, I'm not knocking Glow. Like, that one, I even texted a friend. I was like, Glow and Ginger Pig. Like, the Highlands had 2 spots on, I was like, fuck yeah, way to go. But at the same time, it also made me wonder when, other folks are doing something similar. Is there something that the community doesn't know that the judges did know? And that's one thing I would be, curious to learn about is the qualifications on how they do this, because I know that they're highlighting things like the personality, the vibe, they mentioned this start with skewers and but it's like, what was it that knocked you? Like, I can get it for some of them, but like you mentioned, there's 4 stars out there. If it's Little Nell, are they going to give something? What's in Vail that's going to get one? A Matsuhisa? Sorry, that was funny as fuck by me. But at the same time, let's assume that Bobby gets one at Frosco, because you're not going to just omit the best restaurant, the most highest regarded restaurant in the state. The gentleman has been on CNN fighting for the restaurant industry for fucking 4 years. Like, it's time to give him his flowers. I think he's probably a big part of why the program came here. I'm sure Boulder had a strong argument. And the presence of the Frosco Food Group in places like Aspen and Denver also represent a very big footprint in what would be defined as what I thought a Michelin guide program. So it just kind of throws me for a loop. So if we say Little Nell, let's say we throw Frosk in there. Do we give Kelly one? Because I think either Bruto or Wolf's is going to get one, especially if Basta's on this list. You're not going to just like omit. I mean, it's going to be one of them.
Hands down, Basta's my favorite.
Of his group?
Yeah, I've loved that restaurant for a very long time. And I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just the style, the feel of it.
It is, in fact, it is the quintessential. I said it on social media. It's a fucking slam dunk. Like, it was a solid pick because I thought that is what that would personify is this restaurant. It's in the bottom of an apartment complex. It's unsuspecting, and they're churning out dank ass shit using, their own fermentation process. And again, they're using their own fucking grains to make their own fucking bread, whether it be pizza or pita. Shout out to me for watching British food shows. But I mean, we had to do an emergency podcast. I think we could both agree Hop Alley and La Diabla also personify exactly what we're talking about here. But it throws me for a loop. And the last thing I want to talk about is Tavernetta. I mean, that was your last restaurant before going full scale podcast. How do you feel about this? Is this something that like you feel like is it a snub because it means they won't be getting a star, or is it like, hey, we're next up? How does that shake out?
I mean, I don't begin to understand that because, like, I think in terms of atmosphere, in terms of quality of the ingredients, in terms of the dishes that they deliver, and the Italian regions that they focus on, I mean, what restaurant delivers every single time you dine? I think, like, consistency is so big in this, and they hit all the criteria so well. I think Tad could get, like, I think they deserve a star. Like, because if you're saying, if the Michelin star guide, if 1 star is high quality cooking worth a stop, if somebody were to call me and ask me where do I need to go if I can only choose one place in Denver just to have an out-of-this-world experience from hospitality to the dishes I eat, I will undoubtedly say Tabernacle.
Okay, so we've both done EMP. You've done EMP a couple times just with your 10 years of trips to New York and things of that nature during the podcast season. And then we both know, Chef Rich Lee out at Saison in San Fran, who just retained his second. The team, Hum and the team over at EMP got their third. Shout out to Chef Rebecca. We're excited. Congrats on maternity leave. Good luck with the twins. We're sending y'all best of luck. But you've experienced these multiple Michelin star dinner dining. Like, they literally made your menu out of our former logo. Like, that's how, it goes above and beyond. So that first one, you set a tone or a vibe for the food and how you deliver it through, the whole process and whatnot. And the second one, you have to, elevate everything. So, the criteria for each one is different. But if you just dumb it down to the basic generalities, then yes, Tavernetta obviously is qualified for it. But my question is, if they are in this category, does it feel like folks, I'm going to say folks like Lucinia, Black Belly in Boulder, Brixton, and then Molotov/Misfits? Misfits creativity is in second to none. Chef Bo has done some great stuff in the community. He's raised money for, foreign countries. And then the personality of the food comes through in every single member of that team. And his new restaurant, Molotov, kind of does that same vibe. So, we gave the descriptions of both qualifications for the BIB Gourmand as well as the star. And it feels like it's just kind of lopsided. There's a lot of folks that if their names aren't called for something that would be totally out of left field and awarding something like a fifth, Michelin star, 4 is still a lot. It could very well go Kelly Whitaker, Bobby, and Lachlan, and then the little net, just those 3. But if you're doing that and omitting Softa, I have a lot of motherfucking questions. And Alon has been on Good Morning America for a month and a half. If he doesn't get one, I think that would be a little bit of a classic omission, like Scott Van Pelt leaving out Kevin Durant from top 5 small forwards of ever. But that's what I'm talking about. You have to have 4 just out the gates. But it makes you wonder, if those restaurants I said were not included, Point Easy. They fall into that category. And maybe it's just you got to earn a stripe, like you do in the Beard Foundation. There's politics involved and things of that nature. But at the same time, there's hidden judges that are going around and eating these foods. And then this is the list we get. It gives me I just have a lot of questions. I'm scratching my head because I want to know the criteria and how we got this 9 I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, I'm curious to determine, when did they start initiating? When did they start going to these places, kind of starting to develop ideas for a Michelin star program in Colorado? So, did they visit some of the newer spots, or were they able to have enough reviewers?
I think something like your Major Toms and your Sapsuas, which we'll see on lists for years to come in the future, your Beckons. Obviously Beckon is by no means fucking approachable, so we will be talking about them in a couple weeks as it gets close to it, but that's another conversation to be had, omakase-style dining, Sushi Den and the fact that they fly in, through their own fish company kind of vibes, where... But at the same time, I just don't get it. It seems like they were throwing us a couple, things off the scent of what may be the case. But if we're only awarding 4 stars, then someone like an Olivier may not even be mentioned in the evening. That's I think, a disservice to the food community in Colorado. That's kind of my thought.
Really, we won't know how, based on all of our questions right now, until it happens that night, and until you see, what our potentials, or, how this whole process works out. Maybe for homework, I'll do some more investigation into the Michelin star program and see what I can find.
I mean, I would love for you to do that. Please be boots on the ground researcher guy. We'll have Eve do that. I only said the C word once during the emergency podcast, and that was in the first 30 seconds, so shout out to me. But again, I couldn't disagree more with some of this list. I mean, if we're trying to do something where we're highlighting approachable meals, if we're talking about Latin American foods, like I feel like we missed on a couple of these. And, you know, if the list is technically generic or the nominations or the nods, then is it 9? Are we capped at 9? Like, can we give 12? Like, is this the best foot forward that we're going to recommend? Like, for the next 11 months, folks are going to heed this advice. Did we get that right? Because I don't see a lot of truly authentic representation, especially when the categories are, in fact, a lot of ethnic foods. You know what I'm saying? Like, Colorado was I feel like we missed.
I wouldn't say we necessarily missed. I just say, like, this is the first year it's developing. Like, you know.
Our first year podcast sucked, so that's fair. Treat it like, but at the same time, this is a very highly regarded game. Like, this drives businesses to these restaurants. And like Denise said, there isn't like a bad side to this. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad side, but it's like, is this the list that you would give folks? Would you be like, here's my 9 to hit that are under $100 a head? Because I think some of those do check that box. I don't know if they all do. But if they all do, does that mean those that may be superior in that same genre will be garnering a larger award come September 12th? Those are questions that I have. And I'm trying to keep it as PC as possible so I don't lose my invite. But it makes me wonder. And obviously, we're personally connected with about 7 of these chefs and owners. But at the same time, I'm just curious, and it drove me to have a midday episode that will drop at 5 o'clock.
Anything else we need to say?
Congratulations to all those that were awarded. It's not all of those folks have been fucking slaying it in their respective spaces. They deserve a nod. I didn't know who deserves what over who, but I know for a fact that all those restaurants do have teams that give a shit about being there. I know that all those owners have invested in the community. We can speak about that. We know that they do things outside of the kitchen, that whether it be helping feed those that are less fortunate or providing classes to make the home cook or chef a little bit stronger. And I know that they put their money where their mouth is and that they believe in the team that they have on the plate. So, I mean, congratulations to the 9 that got the nod. I feel like if this 9 sits, we're going to end up giving 5 stars, which I think a lot of folks will have umbrage with. But at the same time, Georgia has them as well. We'll ask our Atlanta correspondents in the coming weeks. And congratulations again to all the chefs. Yeah. Anything we missed? There's a lot of pissed off kitchens.
Anybody from the Michelin guide would like to sit down with us and address these.
I just want to know what the criteria was. If it was personality's sake, then we have some glaring omissions. If it was the quality of the food and approachability, we have some glaring omissions. I just would like to know a little bit more because I think everyone's left with a little confusion from this drop today, and this being our first drop. And obviously a lot of folks being committed to supporting the local food scene here in Colorado for a long time. And so to have this come in and be like, this is the definitive guide of the outside world, it raises a lot of fucking questions.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of like all of this kind of rating system and stuff, the one thing I look for most often than not is consistency. Like, I want to know that, like, if I have a meal here on Monday in October, I can have the same meal in Monday of March, and it tastes around the same. That's what I love about a good restaurant, is consistency.
Who do you want to see on the big stage this time next year?
I think one
I think that's a big question. And I think a lot of those questions that we drummed up today will be answered on the 12th. But at the same time, like you said, this is the first year we have it. Congrats again to the 9 that have gotten the early nods for the BIB Gourmand. Get ready for the 12th. It's going to be a doozy. And shout out again to our sponsor. Sorry about that. This episode went a little bit normal, I guess. I mean, yeah, fuck it. Shout out to our sponsors. Ritual Colorado, Reiki, Seltzers. Anything else? Stay high, stay hungry.
Cheers.
Cheers.